real about something.
What?
Most of us have stepped off the idea of playing fantasy football, right? We don't.
I play it.
But if you just dropped any one of us, and I'm not trying to be a braggart here, into a group of civilians and gave us time to prepare, draft, and work on a fantasy team week to week, we would incinerate individuals. That's how I feel. It doesn't feel.
It's not true.
It is entirely
Can I tell you
true.
one? I'll tell you one thing that you're showing a lack of understanding of. The
I will have a follow up to that comment.
You are still completely, on some level, vulnerable to things that you cannot control, even if you have a great draft. Like, for instance, I'll use my own team this year, where I am buried in the standings, where I drafted Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith-Schuster and T.Y. Hilton and XYZ, and sometimes things don't work out. Carson Wentz made perfect sense as a draft pick for me. I never talk about your fantasy team, but in this case, I'm letting you know that you could pick a great team in August, and you could supplement it with pickups during the year, but it could really haunt you where you can't have a dominant team.
You and I are different. The last time I participated, I dropped an absolute megaton bomb on 9 other haughty individuals who thought that they were all that. I played under the guise of my wife's identity and absolutely obliterated the competition. That was 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I've not touched it since.
I was going to say, do it again.
Well, no, because then my theory would be blown to bits. I'd come in 7th place. I don't actually think that I'd be that good at it.
Almost always I'm in the playoffs and competitive, and that is obviously the help because of all the NFL work we do. But you're not invulnerable. You're just not.
When we did Fantasy West, we would often say, or I would at least, the most important equation, part of fantasy is luck. It's just like gambling. Like 65-70% of it is luck, and the really good players, you work on that other 30%, which over time gives you a pretty significant, advantage. But in any one given season, forget about it.
Agree, disagree.
Luck is mostly the thing.
Also, one other thing we learned is that fantasy football analysts aren't really great at fantasy football.
Not all of them. Some are good. Some are bad.
Some are
You're
good,
right. You're right.
You can join an expert league and win right away if you're good at fantasy football.
Can't wait for the hate tweets to roll in on this one.
Wait, but I thought you just said it's a luck.
No, that's what
I say. I think it's like, I'm just saying it's
this camp over here is sort of standing on the fact that we would utterly dominate
I think it can be both. I mean,
yeah,
luck, you draft Big Ben. Well, no, Big Jen is not someone I draft to begin with. Let's start right there.
What were you up to yesterday?
Huh?
He's
feeling fired out of a cannon right now.
I don't know.
I love it.
All right, it's going to be an interesting show with Mark Sessler. We are at Week 12, the preview show. Tonight, Wes and Greg will be handling Thursday Night Football recap, Colts Texans. After that, we just did, before we started today, a lovely interview with Cynthia Freeland, the analytics expert, and star of many NFL media programs, both on the network and digital side. So we had a nice talk with her about how she's built her career and also how she uses her model, as it's called, to figure out what's going on in a league that's often difficult to figure out.
I feel like it was one of those, Marvel movie or some sort of thing where you introduce a new character to the audience. She's got like a guest role today, but it's a promise of future appearances to come. It's like, here's Cynthia Freeland. You guys are going to get used to her. Now get ready for her model and her computer to take over your life at some point.
Skynet, baby. That's what's going to happen
interview.
here. All right, so as we always do, it's a draft. It's a snake draft. And Greg, you have the first overall pick this week. We have 13 games to get to, so let's do it. 14 games, excuse me.
Really wish I had known that going in. No, let's
common theme here.
Let's go Seahawks Eagles.
Wow.
10 a.m. on Sunday. That first big slate of games. Want to make sure I'm watching a fun one. And I'm fascinated to see this Seahawks team coming off a bye and an Eagles team that desperately needs a win. And if they don't have Lane Johnson, who has missed practice now for the first 2 days of this week, which usually is a pretty bad sign if you're coming off a concussion, I do worry about them because to me that was their identity, running the ball on the right side of their offensive line, turning into a run-first team, which I don't think is the worst strategy against the Seahawks defense, which has been having some holes. If he's out, that's where Jadeveon Clowney's going to be lining up a lot of the time. He'll be on both sides. Jason Peters isn't 100% either, and Clowney, after that performance, he's turned into one of the most fascinating players in the league to watch snap to snap.
I don't know about this Eagles offense. Is this the worst wide receiver core in the league? I think
they're banged up, yes.
They have the second most drops, and we heard Romo last week called Miles Sanders special, called him outstanding. Why are they not making him the focal point of this offense if the receivers are so bad and he's so good?
It's a good question. I mean, I feel like the Eagles right now, they do have the Dolphins, Giants, and Redskins after this game. But if you want to be taken seriously in the NFC at home, I need to see them put up a fight because they have been one of the more lackluster, dullard teams. And I totally agree that Clowney, in a season of trades that have worked for good teams like Minkah Fitzpatrick, Marcus Peters, Laramie Tunsil, Clowney's right at the top of the list with those guys because he has fit right into a Seahawks defense that is not great at all. But they've got some players that they got some pass rush going against the Niners last week. I just trust this team to go anywhere in the country and be there in the fourth quarter and win, and I think they're going to take care of the Eagles.
I mean, if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm so excited about that performance defensively because that was their best defensive game of the season. And so can that carry over? Because if this defense turns into a Pete Carroll-type defense, which is at least closer to being a top 10 defense, then watch out. This team has a really good chance to win a Super Bowl. And one of the things that was different that week was their addition of Quandre Diggs, who had a great game, and now their safety position, which has been a problem for much of the year, maybe is solidified with Quandre Diggs and McDougal together, who's now healthy again. And it's like, okay, you're starting to fix some of the problems you had.
But the defense worth talking about this game is Philadelphia's, which is the best in the NFL over the last 3 weeks, and forcing punts consistently. Almost every possession they're forcing punts. This defense has been turned around, and I really think they're not going to lose 2 games in a row at home. I like the Eagles in this game.
Interesting. Wow.
That's very interesting. I mean, what do you see? Because you could make this statement.
They're slight favorites.
And you were just saying it.
The Eagles 1-point favorites, I think.
You were just saying that the wide receiver group is as bad as it is. You get the feeling that this offense might be a little busted. I worry about their ability to score points against the Seahawks and really anybody at this stage.
I agree. I think it'll be a low-scoring game, but I think that the Eagles' defense is the best unit in this game.
Every week, Carson Wentz gets the ball at the end of the game, and it's become like a trope in Philadelphia now. It's like, well, here's Carson Wentz's chance to make a signature drive. Like, he needs that signature drive. Like, we need that.
Aguilar holds on to the ball.
Right, and they haven't had that moment, whereas the Seahawks, like, every week's a signature drive. They don't know how to do anything but win close games in the fourth quarter. That's all they do.
I just say, conversely, the Seahawks, who keep losing tight ends, for instance, turned Jacob Hollister into a star player over the – I feel like Dan could go into the Seahawks offense and put up an 8-100-1 line without any issues. And then, Josh Gordon – showed up at the end of that Niners game and could be a factor for that team. They're adding these players at the right time. I trust the Seahawks until they show me that they should not be trusted.
Tyler Lockett is uncertain for this game. Pete Carroll believes he will play, but Pete Carroll's been overly optimistic about players before. He didn't practice Wednesday. That's huge because, as Wes mentioned, it is a different Eagles defense. Since they've gotten Jernigan back, they're better up front. And then Ronald,
all their
cornerbacks are healthy. Mills and Darby especially played really well last week against the Patriots.
All right. Thought about locking up the Seahawks there.
Go for it.
Kind of talked me out of it.
We should do it together. Let's do it together.
Bad offense.
Don't listen. No, they were on different sides of the fence here. Don't listen to the guy that's 4-7 letting you talk him out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm on a 6-game streak. Mark, what about the idea that
that's what I'm saying.
Eagles have?
Trust your instincts.
I know the Eagles, even though they've been kind of on and off this season, they have a couple like out of nowhere big wins at Green Bay, at Buffalo. Is another one coming?
I said that the Eagles would open 6-0, and I thought they were the most complete team in the NFC, and they just have been very underwhelming. I think that they're unpredictable and untrustworthy. It's a weird lock, but if you and I went down Seahawks Lock Boulevard, the one thing I say is I just don't care if the Seahawks are on the road. I don't care if you put them in the middle of Russia, they knock a team out.
Let's lock it up. Let's double lock up there.
Bang!
Another double lock. I feel like that is becoming a theme of the season, and it's nice. I think it's a nice thing.
We're going to win it, too.
Unity.
All right, next up, Wes, you have the second overall pick. Wes, who every time he would play in an expert league would come out with a W. Every time, first place and the title. Look, not a part of fantasy.
I'm going to let that stand as the narrative because it's true. So, yes.
We got those flat screens, Wes, from that.
We
old,
do.
That I won the league, got a flat screen. Wes took over the spot, the road spot, got a flat screen. Still have it.
You got the hardware. You're winning prizes, expensive, valuable prizes.
What do you get for winning it every year or winning it once?
He won.
We just had to keep passing it along the line to new Roto-World people because Roto-World people kept winning it.
No, it was not a violation of company policy at Roto-World. They didn't have rules.
All right, Wes, you're up.
I'm a little flummoxed, a little nonplussed by Greg bypassing Cowboys at Patriots, and the only explanation I have for it is that he's afraid of the Cowboys and does not want to watch the Patriots lose in this game.
You got to learn how this game works. There's only 2 games in the afternoon, so I'm going to be watching it regardless. That's
you got to play the game in good faith, though. That's all.
Okay.
No. I'm saying my point is there's a way to I want to make sure I have the 10 a.m. games that I want because ultimately I'll work it that I'm covering this game.
I misread Greg. He has a lot of confidence in his quarterback who has a lower touchdown to interception ratio and passer rating than Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph over the last 7 games.
7 games. That is quite a sample size, Greg Rosenthal.
And I don't think Brady's the problem. I think he's playing fine. I think it's everything else around him.
Okay.
Last week I think he was part of the problem, but that would be the first time I thought that all year that I think he had a really poor game.
I think weather played more into that than we could see on TV.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
And I was thinking, okay, this week, maybe you get healthier. You do get Isaiah Wynn back. He's going to be activated, the
Munoz.
left tackle. Isaiah Munoz. And that's fine. It's not really the pass protection that's totally killed them. It's the running game. And to me, Burkhead is not an asset. And they need to get Sony Michel going because he's the only one that can make people miss maybe on a running down. But the line, your boy Dante Scarnecchia is having a tough year with some of these injuries that they've had, and they haven't been able to overcome it. In theory, this should be a matchup. Maybe you can run the ball a little bit. If I'm the Cowboys, I would be a little concerned that I saw both Scarborough and Jeff Driscoll be able to run it so well, especially Scarborough in the red zone. And I think what Tom Brady said about wanting to play to their defense, you need to have a running game for that. I mean, if you want to have some longer drives, like they are too one-dimensional. I'm not saying that's everything. They've gotten by with just okay running games over the years, but they're 30th in the league in yards per carry, and it's hard to watch. That they can't survive these 2nd and 11s, 3rd and 9s because they don't have guys on the outside who can catch. And Philip Dorsett's hurt, and Mohamed Sanu hurt his ankle. That looked like a pretty serious ankle injury. I do not expect him to play.
They're saying he could miss
multiple games,
multiple
right?
weeks. Yeah.
I mean, you're right. The Patriots, and you've been harping on this, and I just naturally, because of we've been watching New England do this forever, I just expect them to round out and get through whatever known on-paper issues they have. But their last 4 games on the ground, 74, 79, 74, and 74 yards, and it looks that way. They've in the past have been able, at this time of year, to start to pound on teams with 160, 180, 200-yard performances where they dominate the time of possession, they dominate the clock, and I think that's obviously led to some of Tom Brady's issues. And, we can always point to Tom Brady is the guy, unlike Peyton Manning back in the early 2000s, that had no talent around him and still made it work. You get to a point where their roster and their injuries and the depletion around him is going to put too much pressure on him to make plays that he's not making right now statistically.
I think they can still turn it around, though. And I'm not sure if the Cowboys are an easy matchup or a hard matchup. On paper, they look pretty good up front to me. They certainly have a lot of talent defensively. It's really on their defense. The Patriots are finding ways to win games. I do think they can get better offensively. But their defense, who we've talked a lot about this year, they're going to be tested here in the span of 5 weeks. They play the Ravens, the Cowboys, and the Chiefs. For my money, those are the 3 best offenses in the league. Kyle Van Noy is their best player up front, which is wild on a defense this good. They're going to have to find a way to get pressure on Dak Prescott because there's just so many weapons. I always trust offense in the NFL, not defense. That's why I don't feel great about this game, at least not them as a heavy favorite.
You figure what Belichick usually does, I would imagine he puts Gilmore on Gallup and double teams Amari Cooper and then says, beat me with Randall Cobb and Jason Witten.
That sounds about right.
Well, Zeke Elliott might beat you because you're giving up like 5.2 yards per carry.
I think that is probably the risk they would take. You got to try to stop this Cowboys passing attack. And I'm not saying Zeke looks bad, but he led the NFL in yards per game in his first season as a rookie, in his second season, and in his third season. And he's nowhere near that this season. He's 8th or 9th.
Second level guy miss. He's not as
explosive. So they're not as good a running team. They're a good running team. They're fine, but they're not what they used to be.
And the Patriots at home, they have held teams to 14 points or fewer in 7 straight, and that is legit.
That's not going to happen, though.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm with you that this is a tougher matchup than most, but what they've done to quarterbacks, 4 touchdowns to 19 picks this season, and their defense is not the defense earlier in the year that was scoring points left and right. But I love the matchup of Kellen Moore versus not Bill Belichick, but Kellen Moore versus Steve Belichick. This is the future of the NFL coming at us, right?
Moore versus
mullet. There you go.
What?
Moore versus the mullet.
Perhaps it's an injury, but why are we in week 12 and Zeke Elliott is still not? Why is he not making people miss? Like what's changed right now?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think he looks as explosive. I also think some of those linemen are not blocking as Tyron Smith, fine as a pass blocker, and according to Pro Football Focus, not having a good run blocking.
And he's not healthy either. Trey Flowers really beat him pretty good last week, and Lyle Collins is questionable for this game, which I think is big for the Cowboys. Yeah, last week watching the game, I thought you got to keep Pollard in there because Pollard can do a few things that Zeke can't.
Absolutely.
Including make people miss that easily in the open field. That is a great backfield, but you got to keep Pollard in the mix.
You can't make Zeke's money right now.
That had to be one of the takeaways from last week's Cowboys game, as Pollard is underutilized.
Moving on, I am going to go with a game in the NFC South, a dirt nap game for one team. They got to win the game, and it's a really tough assignment because they got the Saints. So it's the Panthers and Saints. Matchup between two of the best young running backs in the league. Oh, that was the other mistake I made. In hindsight, it's a mistake. But picking third, I took Alvin Kamara. Picking fourth, Christian McCaffrey. One guy has a high ankle sprain, doesn't do anything all year. The other guy
can't beat yourself up for that one.
If you got the Alvin Kamara of last week, starting in week 1 till now, it would have been
exactly.
fine.
He's back for the money time of the fantasy season.
Anyway, so you got Kamara versus McCaffrey. The problem, I guess, is Drew Brees is against Kyle Allen, if you're a Panthers fan. And Kyle Allen is coming off a game where he was not competitive. It was a 29-3 loss to the Falcons. And I know Atlanta's revitalized on defense magically, almost suspiciously over the last 2 weeks. But you wonder if Kyle Allen, this slumping version of Kyle Allen, remember, it wasn't so long ago. We saw him in London. They had won 5 of 6. He had a little juice to him. Maybe he wasn't, playing extremely well, but he was part of a winning team. Do they have it in them to go to the Superdome and keep their season alive against the Saints team? 8-2, got back on track a little bit last week in Tampa, thanks to Jameis Winston. A lot of help from him in that game. So I think this could be a good game because one team is very desperate, and we'll see how it plays out.
I don't think they can, the Panthers, to answer your question, because the Saints are superior in the ways like on the offensive line and the toughness of their defense, and even rushing the passer, I would say, that the Panthers used to be better than the Saints. These two teams all have played a lot of good games over the years. They played in the playoffs a few years ago, and that was the Panthers' edge, was they were a little tougher. They could protect pretty well, and now it's the Saints to me that, okay, Brees throws those sideline creepers that Wes said, and I gotta give Wes credit because there were a couple last week that back-to-back outs that he threw to the opposite hash that you were like, oh, wow. I mean, that was interesting. And they didn't try anything like that the rest of the week. But it sort of doesn't matter. They have turn the ball over less than any team in the league. They have a great offensive line. They've now got Kamara running in full flow. It's a very complete team. I'm not that worried about Breeze's arm strength because I think it's just a really good team. So much more complete.
I'd throw in Jared Cook too. Looked healthy and athletic last week, and they needed that. And they've gone through this stretch with Kamara not at full strength, without Jared Cook, without Drew Brees. They're getting healthy at the right time. And when they went up 20-0 on the Bucs last week, I mean, there's a lot of Tampa Bay issues going on there. But to me, that was the Saints team I've been waiting to see all year. And you have, if Carolina wins this, and I think teams are getting more and more tape on the quarterback there, and that's different than when he was making his second or third start. They're learning about how to get to him and how to deal with, if Christian McCaffrey is their entire offense, and if you can keep that in check, you're good.
I don't want to see any more Curtis Samuel breakout articles next offseason. I'm done with the Curtis Samuel breakout. How come DJ Moore can get 100 yards every week with Kyle Allen at quarterback, but Curtis Samuel hasn't gotten 100 yards in a game all season?
Well, Moore's a more complete, solid receiver. He's the guy that Steve Smith said reminds me of me.
Right.
And I don't know if he's a top 10 in the NFL receiver at any point, but he's a really good route runner and a solid starting receiver. He makes more sense to me as a true number one type of guy for them.
And David Tepper says he doesn't want to deal with mediocrity. This isn't mediocrity. They're 5-5, but they're 27th in DVOA. They're down there with the dregs of the league.
It's not a special defense, and to defend Allen a little bit, it's like Greg Little they put back in the lineup last week at left tackle, and he just got destroyed. I think their line has struggled, and sometimes that is partly on the quarterback. Like I think Darnold struggles some of this year, or at least like a little bit on because when you're that young, you're not used to being able to set protections and do all these sorts of things that a veteran like Cam Newton could do, and you just don't even expect a second-year guy like Allen or Darnold to be experts at doing at this point.
Did we fork the Panthers on Tuesday?
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without looking back, no concerns.
They gone.
All right. They gone. And Mark, you're up.
All right, well, I'm going to just say this, and you can disagree with me. This slate of games this week is, I feel like the first time we've hit a point where there is not a lot of hotness to choose from. Some of these are matchups between two teams.
Well, all the good ones are in the primetime games are great. I think there's like 4 or 5 great games for once, but that means that there's a lot of trash.
Well, they've been picked at this point.
Right.
So I'm going to go where my heart is, and it's, we talk about another team right on the edge of existence and potentially close to extinction if they don't make it happen, is the Browns at home against Miami. And what I want to see is how they respond to, obviously, a Steelers game full of tumult, full of chaos. And what came out of it was the tipping point, and I've expected this in many ways, and it's not everyone, but for those who wanted to just finally unleash on the Browns' experience of this season for multiple reasons, the Myles Garrett scenario at the end of Thursday Night Football, which was a total circus, gave you full right to, because this is a team that the B-line, and I look at the Dolphins and the Browns as very different in a couple ways. The Dolphins, you can look at them over the first couple of months and say they were an absolute mess. You look at the last month. They are disciplined. The Browns are not disciplined. The Dolphins do not kill themselves with penalties. The Browns have been doing that up until a couple weeks ago. I truly wonder who the better coach in this game is, because what I'm seeing week to week and having tracked the Dolphins, just out of curiosity, is that Brian Flores is one thing they can build on. Now, that can change by next season. I just believe in that coach. And Freddie Kitchens, week after week, in game, I believe has been outdueled. And their defense was dominant against a bad quarterback, Mason Rudolph, and again in Pittsburgh last week. What they had to do in this one is make up for the fact that you lost, in the course of 3 hours, Myles Garrett, Larry Ogunjobi, your safety Morgan Burnett, and I realize this player is not valuable and they made this decision on their own, but depth at wide receiver and Antonio Callaway. You've lost 3 core defenders who were starters and major contributors. Myles Garrett had a higher pressure rate than basically anyone in the league and was doing more for Cleveland than almost any defensive player is doing for their own team at this point. He is a huge, unmaskable loss. And at this point, you just take Nick Chubb and say, we're going to run you, and use Kareem Hunt the way we've been using him, and you attack Miami from start to finish on the ground. That's my guess. And I think it's going to be a closer game than anyone in Cleveland would want. and they will take care of business. But they're not going to win games in blowouts. They're just not going to do it.
If we lowered the bar of the Texans when J.J. Watt went out, I feel like it's fair to do the same thing with the Browns, with how important Garrett is to that defense.
I'd say even more so, though.
But it's not this game. The Dolphins have an XFL caliber offensive line. They are brutal. They are terrible. And all those players you mentioned, the Browns missing, so now they're only 5 times as talented as the Dolphins.
And they've not been living up to their talent.
Right.
That's my issue with Cleveland. I don't care about their talent. They've not lived up to it outside of the running backs.
But I understand what Mark's saying, because if you have Garrett and Ogunjobi, this is a game that, because of that defensive line and because Fitzpatrick, even when it's going well, has to overcome so much. That's why I think he's really just played outstanding this year. Even a game like last week. I mean,
this year's a feather in his cap.
He did what he could. You would just think the Browns would dominate it so much, kind of like they did against Pittsburgh, that it almost doesn't matter what happens on offense. They'll get enough. Whereas now you're missing a couple pieces. Could Fitzpatrick make a few plays and make this one uncomfortable? I respect Flores enough to think it can. He hasn't found many players to hold on to for next year, but one of them that he has is Nick Needham, an undrafted free agent rookie who, since Week 7, is tied for the #1 cornerback in the NFL in Pro Football Focus's
Need him.
ratings.
And
so how about the Needham-Beckham matchup?
And
Who thought that would be big time?
One of them is not Kalen Ballage. I watch him and I want a refund. I want to watch a real running back.
9 carries for 9 yards, I believe, this week.
He has a chance to set the all-time record for yards per carry. No one over a certain threshold, maybe it's 100, has ever averaged under 2 yards per carry, which is where he is at for the season. So he can make some history. And let's give a little credit to Devante Parker. After 7 different making the leaps, off-season tropes, he's finally made the leap in his 6th season, I believe.
Mark Walton was a big loss in their backfield when he was suspended.
Well, they needed to after what happened last week.
And then, he had a domestic violence incident that he was connected to, which led to his release. And I'm just seeing 4 hours ago posted on TMZ, NFL's Mark Walton bizarrely skips and sprints out of jail after battery arrest. So
that's no bueno.
Something's going on there.
Some issues.
And to be clear, we're taping this before we know the appeal answer on Ogunjobi and Garrett, which the league plans to put down or notify everyone before this game. So they'll probably have an answer for it on Friday. Maybe there's a chance Ogunjobi plays, by the way.
I thought Ogunjobi's was held up, but they are waiting still on Myles Garrett.
I am corrected.
Yeah, Ogunjobi.
Let's do a little breaking news. As we were taping, Myles Garrett's indefinite ban has been upheld, and Marquise Pouncey of the Steelers had his reduced to 2 games. So, little update.
There you go. Mark, let's go through it. They have 6 games to play. They've won 2 in a row. They're 4-6. Just give me win or loss. You ready? Home, Miami.
Win. Oh, yeah.
At Pittsburgh.
That game's going to be crazy. Loss.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 5-7. Home, Cincinnati.
Win. Oh, yeah.
6-7. At Arizona.
Win. Oh, yeah. I don't feel great about that.
7-7. Home, Baltimore.
Loss.
7-8. You going against Cincinnati on the road.
Win. Oh, yeah.
So 8-8 is what you say.
Yeah, I don't think they're a playoff team with the way that they've gone through this season.
That's not exactly going out on a limb.
All right, it's snakes to you,
well,
Mark.
nor do I claim that it is.
Right.
Just what I see. Wow, and just a cornucopia of excitement to pick from here. But I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take the late Jacksonville at Tennessee game.
See, Dan, it all worked out. Now,
What?
I'm good. Yeah, you guys were critical of my 4 p.m. Anyways, go ahead.
No,
one
I mean,
cares.
I hope that I didn't step on your toes with that pick, but
No.
I'm interested in this, and this is low-hanging fruit, but I want to see Nick Foles and him progressing. I thought about one thing is that to go through what Nick Foles went through, to suffer broken bones and come back, and want everyone wanting him to light it up right away and be the Super Bowl Nick Foles on a team that he was with the Eagles that had the greatest, tight end duo in a while to play in a Super Bowl. And he's got nothing at that position right now. They just lost Josh Oliver, who's been sent to IR. They've got nobody playing at that position, and D.D. Westbrook is not expected. Well, he didn't practice Thursday, so he could be out. So it's Foles and DJ Chark. And what concerns me about the Jaguars is how they were absolutely run over, stampeded last week, the run defense, 264 yards by the Colts. And now you got Derrick Henry, and I just trust Tennessee's. I almost wanted to lock up the Titans, which I don't think I've ever done on this show. But to me,
we have to lock a game.
We do at some point. You do. But I just this feels to me, if Tennessee wants to go flip-flop, win-loss, if you at one point want to start to build some momentum, this is where you do with Derrick Henry, and you get the job done. And Ryan Tannehill has been more of a big play quarterback than we've really ever seen from person number 2 in that position.
I'm locking up the
Tennessee.
Titans.
Yes.
Wow. I lost the lock on Titans Jaguars back in week 3. Very different teams back then. Gardner Minshew and Marcus Mariota in a rainstorm. The Jags D had Jalen Ramsey back then, and although they didn't because he was sitting out, right? Who knows? I think they really miss, even as much as Jalen Ramsey.
Bad injury.
Telvin Smith. That's part of their linebacker core has been totally victimized in the running game and sometimes in the passing game. Myles Jack is a guy who they believe in as a core guy who's not having his best season, and maybe it's partly because he doesn't have his tag team partner, Telvin Smith, who retired out of nowhere, who just made so many plays in pursuit for that team. And you're right, their defense just isn't – it's not even – it's an average defense, and it's just another reminder. It's tough to build around epic defenses because who have been the most epic defenses in the last few years? Jaguars in 17, Bears in 18. You know, those were one-time things.
It's so hard to run it back the next year.
Right. They ran it back as good, and then now they're just back to kind of normal.
Even when the Jaguars had Telvin Smith and they were the best defense in the league, they had issues with the Titans. The 8-8, 9-7 Titans, whatever they were, would go in and sweep them when they were at their best. And I think that Derrick Henry is going to be a handful for this defense, which allows, I believe, 5.3 yards per carry on the season.
One of the reasons,
this was that Thursday night game
Henry's
a year ago where Henry went off.
Yes.
Henry's had a good year, and I think they lean on him now more than ever. They don't even play Deion Lewis barely. And one of the reasons why I worry about Nick Foles keeping up in a shootout is just Cam Robinson and Juwan Taylor, their 2 tackles, are ranked 52 and 69 out of about 80 tackles. So that's also one of the worst tackle groups in the league. And if you wanted to make an argument for Minshew, it's Foles getting hit last week, which he did quite a bit, just kind of standing there. And it reminded me of that kind of trope where people are always like, oh, those running quarterbacks, it's a risky. They're going to get hurt at some point. And it's just like guys who get hit hard a lot are the guys who get hurt.
Yeah, so do Stone Age ponies.
Right.
Standing there, not
it's
moving.
like now there's no rule to it because like Tom Brady doesn't get hit because he gets rid of the ball or he moves. Peyton Manning was good at that. The guys like Foles who have no mobility but stand there and show some courage but then just get destroyed. I mean, that's one way to get hurt too.
Derrick Henry feels underrated. He is, since last December, he leads the league in rushing and touchdowns. He is also, I believe, set to be a free agent. Seems like a guy that the Titans should lock up.
There's some Leonard Fournette to his game where the script has to be to his liking in order for him to dominate, and he can disappear for long stretches of time.
Better version than Fournette, though. He's shown in his career.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. To the old Zeuser, Raiders at Jets is my pick. Easy for a couple of reasons. I do want to see the Raiders in a trap game. When's the last time the Raiders have been in a trap game?
2002.
It was week 15 of 2002. The Raiders were in a trap. No, it feels like it's been a minute. And
last week?
That may actually be the case unless you go back to the playoff year from a couple
seasons ago. They played the Bengals last week if you wanted to make a case for that.
But isn't a trap game when you're looking ahead to the next opponent that's good? Isn't that what a trap game is?
Well, I view a trap game as they would look past the Jets.
Okay.
I mean, the Bengals hung around.
Got
but
it. I thought it was just like a game you're expected to win. But this one's much more dangerous because the Jets actually have a quarterback and it's on the road.
All right, so here we are. Here are the Raiders. Coming off a game against Cincinnati. Cincinnati gave up more points than anyone in the league on a weekly basis, and somehow at home, the Raiders scored 17 and squeaked by. And I wonder what that's about. Because as good as a story as the Raiders are they a team that could be vulnerable to? I know they're 6-4, but on the road against a Jets team that is by no means a good team, but has shown flashes of competence, and they're coming off back-to-back wins off teams that are combined 3-2. and 17. So that's important to keep in mind. But also, it seems like we're starting to get some actual progress on the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line has been better. Ryan Khalil, two big swings and misses by Joe Douglas, which I don't kill him for because he kind of had to hit the ground running and improvise to try to find ways to improve the line, and neither move worked. Kelechi Osemele didn't work at guard, and then it led to a behind-the-scenes drama about an injury, and he eventually was released. Matt Khalil, they gave him $8 million, said we need a veteran center to stabilize the line and also work with our young quarterback. And on paper, again, and logically, it was like, oh, this is a good move. This was a smart – it was a disaster. Not only was Khalil not close to the player he was with the Panthers, apparently his style of play and the way he goes about the position led to some confusion and was part of the reason why that line seemed so out of sync, is what we're hearing coming out of the Jets. So Jonathan Harrison has replaced him at center. So there's some stability now on that line, which should help again against the Raiders. Max Crosby is a guy to look out for. You want to talk about this, the baby Raiders, man. Every week it sounds like a tired storyline, but it keeps happening every week. These guys come out and have big games, and Max Crosby had 4 sacks last week. He had a huge Thursday night game the week before in terms of pressures. He is a rising guy and just another example of what Mike Mayock and John Gruden have been able to do, building a young core very quickly.
I feel like that's the difference between like the Raiders and the Jets, is having a rookie class come in on both sides of the ball and stay, outside of the safety, stay healthy and contribute, every one of them. What would the Raiders be without Josh Jacobs right now? I mean, they are leaning on these guys and they're contributing.
He runs downhill like the field is tilted. I get more impressed with him every week.
They're 6-1 in one-score games, the Raiders, which means they haven't won a single game all year by more than 8 points, which to me is a sign of a team that's had the right schedule and has learned how to win close games, but is beatable and has had some good fortune. And I do think this is a trap game. I picked the Jets in my game picks column because I don't think the Raiders have much of a pass rush. I think if you've got a pass rush, I just don't trust this Jets offense to do anything. But I don't think the Raiders really do. I think Crosby has been really good, but he's not going to keep me up at night. He did a lot of his damage against one of the worst tackles in the league last week. And it was nice to see Sam Darnold do Sam Darnold things last week. A lot of beautiful throws. They got him on the move more. They're throwing the ball short more. It's less Robbie Anderson, which is bad for him. He's having a terrible free agent contract year if he was looking to get paid next year.
Good for the community, though.
I just think it's like a coin flip game, and the Raiders' luck is they don't feel like a team that's going to win every single week. It's
Why
crazy.
don't you lock up the Jets then?
I mean, I don't feel that good about it. This is like a coin flip.
It is a prototypical trap game because next week the Raiders are at Kansas City, and think about that. If they stumble and get beat by the Jets, they are staring at 6-6 potentially if they don't stage a big win on the road in Kansas City. So this is they did a nice job. They had that homestand out of that long road trip, and they swept the homestand against Lions, Chargers, Bengals. But now this will be a real challenge. We'll know 3 weeks from now whether the Raiders are a team that, could make some
I would say this, on the other side of the trap game is the Jets, who are probably in the wrong division because they just went 3-1 against the NFC East. But you could change the vibe of a season that's gotten pretty dark at times if the Jets knock out Oakland. I'm not saying that there are answers here or that you necessarily want the coach to stick around in Adam Gase, but if they can pick up from here, and the Raiders have been one of the teams that have given up more 20-plus completion yards and 40-plus, you can strike on them through the air.
Yeah, three-game winning streak. It'd be a 3-game winning streak.
And by the way, after that, they go at Cincinnati, home Miami. So, yes, everything changes.
Change that vibe a little.
The whole narrative around this Jets season changes if they win against Oakland.
It's funny how Wes tried to make me lock them up. Like I'm this weak will. Oh, yeah, let's lock up those Jets.
I want to see if if this game shows us exactly why Le'Veon Bell did not get
traded,
did not get the payday he thought he was going to get. Because Josh Jacobs is so much better than him. I don't know if there's a more boring running back in the league to watch right now than Le'Veon Bell.
A lot of 3-yard runs this year.
There's just no playmaking ability going on.
He doesn't have a 20-yard run this year. I mean, you're right. When you saw Billy Powell in last week, you're like, oh, that was a little extra.
Oh,
juice.
Josh Adams got a carry, and I think it was called back on penalty, but he shot out of a cannon compared to Le'Veon Bell.
All right, moving on. It is now time for Chris Wessling to make a selection.
I'm going to go with the Broncos at the Bills.
Broncos at the Bills.
Fun game.
It could be a fun game, and the Bills might be ripe for the picking. I liked how well they played last week, but they are riding so high, beating a bad team to a pulp, talking about comparing it to a Thanksgiving feast. That's how much we ate out there today against the Dolphins.
Yeah, come on.
Give me a break, Bills.
No feast.
That's the only offensive line that could make your defensive line look good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they were talking up this Tremaine Edwards speech, and I like a second-year linebacker kind of, stepping into a leadership role. But after the game, they were talking about it like it was Newt Rockne or something. Yeah, you're playing the Dolphins. If they beat the Broncos, I mean, it's the best team they've beaten. Is this the best team they've beaten all year?
I don't know.
I guess they beat the Titans. The Titans would be the best team they've beaten.
And I expect the Bills to win at home, but I just don't think it'll be easy. I think these teams are much closer than their records would suggest they are.
I think Denver's offense, well, we've all seen this and talked about it over the last couple of weeks. Their parts are starting to play the way that you would have hoped with Phillip Lindsay. Cortland Sutton's been awesome, obviously. Noah Fant finally has woken up and had big plays. This is a tough game for the Bills, and they've only crossed 30 points twice all year, and it's to the Dolphins both times, to your point right there. And you just can't trust them. Yeah, they had long touchdown drives last week, and it's really the only time all season where you could count on them to score touchdowns versus field goals. But the Broncos could make this tough. I could see this being like 16-13. Buffalo ekes it out, and Stephen Hauska's not exactly been an ace in the hole either. So.
I like the aggressiveness, though. Two things that the Bills coaching staff did, which was just they blitzed a lot more. They're not getting much pass rush pressure, and you have such a good veteran secondary. Get creative, which I think you can do against Brandon Allen in a pretty bad offensive line. And then, more importantly, I think they leaned into Josh Allen's running ability. A little more last week. That's what he does best. And he sells the hell out of a fake. I'm always killing Josh Allen. But, man, he is one of the best at those run-action plays where the defense gets confused because he's so great at faking it. He's very good at running. That's why they're so good in the red zone. It's like that's what he does the best. Just lean into it. Let him be Cam Newton, Brian
may
Daboll,
not have him for 10 years, right?
Right,
So
Brian
it's like,
Daboll
use
is
him.
creative. Like, that's when they've been at their most fun, and that's when I'd be the most afraid of them is when they're running him as much as possible.
16 of their 22 first downs came by his arm or his legs. He was sort of a one-man gang. I mean, John Brown had a great game too, but that was Devin Singletary's worst game, I think. And he's playing 65% of the snaps in I think 4 straight weeks, which means Frank Gore is used, like Greg said, only in short yardage.
Unsolicited advice to the Bills. They've bought themselves a nice little bit of rope here with a 7-3 start. Win this game. Get to 8-3 because it closes out pretty tough. At Dallas, home Baltimore, at Pittsburgh, at New England, home Jets.
Woo.
Get yourself that 8th win and give yourself a little bit of wiggle room if things get hairy in December.
I think it's a big week for the AFC wildcard race because of that. The Bills and the Raiders both in spots where if they don't win this week where they're favored, then that they could really fall off the map, and teams like Mark's Browns rise up. Who knows? Maybe the Jets do it with that.
Rise up!
I mean, we talked about potentially forking the Browns. They're not dead yet.
I love
Snake.
it. I love it.
Oh no!
Wait, I thought you just said they're 8-8 this year.
Yeah, but that's a month plus from now. That's not forking them yet. And by the way, I could.
I
be
wouldn't
wrong.
have forked them either. I didn't
could
vote
be
for a
wrong.
fork either.
No, I know.
Well, what a lucky guy I am. I've got the best team in football still on the board.
Uh-oh.
It's the Atlanta Falcons at home.
Did
against-
Erica not hear about this?
Well, technically we haven't gotten to it.
Yeah,
we haven't gotten to
this
it.
is the first one.
Yeah.
This is the first one, so that was on Dan.
That's on me.
That's not on you.
You just looked sleepy when I looked over to you.
Dan immediately name drops the producer.
I'm just in the comment section.
Oh, what's
chilling with
going on
our-
over
with
there?
our fans.
Let's take a quick pause, Greg, to check in
Please.
with the comments. This is streaming live on YouTube. Get excited.
Yeah, someone said I lock up Greg giving a hot take and then backing out of locking it up, and they were correct.
Whoa.
What do you mean, though?
I think the
But
Jets.
the Jets.
maybe? Yeah.
I mean, how is that that's not a hot take. I mean, I'm just saying they're going to win a game. It doesn't mean,
put-
you could
It's
say
pretty
that-
spicy,
Put your
meatball.
money where your mouth is.
Was that Nick Wessling also trying to get
All
Greg
right.
to lock up the Jets?
Well, they want a lock so bad. They want a spicy lock.
Here we go.
How about let's go down to Atlanta and lock up the Falcons? I was doing that the whole time.
Oh God!
Let's
I
do
like
it.
that.
All
When you
right.
can lock up a 3-7 team, you got to do it.
Every time. Twice on Sunday.
The Falcons have a plus 60 scoring differential since halftime of the Seahawks game 2.5 weeks ago. How about that? I don't think they'll necessarily keep that up, but I do like the matchup against, as the fantasy heads would say, a pass funnel as strong as the Bucs, which is like you've got a running, great run defense,
Let's not use that term.
But terrible pass defense. That's a pass funnel. Oh, you want to invite Matt Ryan to throw the ball 50 times? I love it. I wanted to make sure Julio Jones is playing in this game. He did return to practice on Thursday. That's huge. They're still without Austin Hooper, which worries me, but I do think they're just a much more complete team than the Bucs. Maybe they're not going to dominate defensively the rest of the year, but I do think Matt Ryan and the offense is going to be really good, and they're going up against Jameis Winston, and they'll get pressure on him. And I think the most disappointing thing as a Winston fan, based on what I thought about him as a rookie, is his pocket presence. As Wes would put it, he called him a gangly giraffe back there or whatever.
Drunken giraffe.
I thought his pocket presence was kind of one of his strengths, because on some plays he does have that great movement where he buys time for himself. But I think as he's gotten more mature in the league, he seems more frenetic. And that skill set has gotten worse, and I think that's not going to work.
Mark, no disrespect. You know I love you.
Okay.
I'm jumping out of our lock, and I'm jumping over to Falcons Nation.
Really?
Dirty Bird Land.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I'm excited.
I love it.
I want it. I love this game for the Falcons. And you know what? You know what else needs to be known right here?
He's going for a double lock. Wait, no, that's not a thing.
What needs to be remembered here, not only is the Atlanta Falcons defense now west to 85 Bears.
Oh, yeah,
some people. Jameis Winston is coming up on a very sobering century milestone. He has 98 turnovers in less than 5 seasons. He's going to set that mark in the building where you can get a hot dog and a beer for $5.
In the modern risk-averse NFL, it's hard to have that many turnovers.
And not get benched. They've had endless faith in Winston to turn it around. He's just so sloppy, and it's proven now that Bruce Arians, as respected as he is as an offense, he couldn't fix him either. Not looking too far ahead, we're in the middle of the season still, but who is going to buy in on Jameis Winston in the offseason, and what will they buy in him as a backup quarterback, or will
as like the guy
talk
who's
themselves
with
into him
a
as a
first
starter?
round, like with a first round pick that's
right.
ultimately going to be the guy. I would like to see him at some point with like a. I don't think he's the worst starter in the league. He's just he's closer to he does make a lot of plays every week.
Messy.
He's just
He's
so
messy.
They've given up 20. Here's another record-breaking day that they could have on Sunday. They've given up 27 points in 8 straight games. They're only the 3rd team ever to do that. They can break the record by giving up 27 on Sunday.
That's what reminds me. The Bucs, to me, they are production, not wins. Points, not wins. It's like you get these big numbers years in a row, and they seem to be the same thing. This year, you're getting pass rush, but it's not changing the game either. To your point on Winston, his 18 picks are the second most by any player through 10 games in over 2 decades. I mean, he's killing them with his lack of pocket presence, with his mistakes.
You never keep your job this long. To be able to throw 30 interceptions, there's got to be a couple different factors in place to let it happen, and that could be where his tenure, unless he does get benched finally, but who knows. If his tenure ends with a 30 interception season, it would be so fitting. For the Bucs, as bad as that is, and as the idea of, oh my God, we invested so much time in this guy and believed him, and there's no decision. It's like, we're not going to be on the fence about this guy anymore. It just didn't work, and you got to move on.
Outlasted Marcus Mariota.
You get a compensatory pick for him. How about that?
One question, Greg, about your Falcons.
Okay.
As of week 12, do you have more confidence in their defense or in an offense with no running game and no Austin Hooper?
I would say the offense still, because it's Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. Trust that passing game. Trust that quarterback.
I never thought I'd be asking that question, but here we are.
Wes, shh. Don't get them to back out of this lock that is doomed.
Feeling good. Feel really good. I felt conflicted about that one, our lock, Mark. This one,
there weren't a lot of obvious ones on the board. I don't feel this isn't the safest one in the world. I'll agree with that, Mark.
Coming out of Sunday, people are going to be talking about Brian Schottenheimer is getting head coach interviews after they wax the Eagles.
All right, now we snake back.
Oh yeah, and
lots to pick from.
I really
there.
did not do a good job drafting. I take take it back, Wes. I should have just taken that Cowboys Patriots. I didn't see.
Oh, there goes
I
your
didn't
whole goes your whole storyline
Erica's
for this
point.
episode.
I blew it because I didn't realize I'd end up with 3 10 a.m. games.
That's what I meant.
And now I'm doing.
You got to play better than
the
that.
Sessler, now I'm doing the Sessler strategy
homework.
and taking the worst game possible, and that's Lions Redskins. And I'm sorry that Jeff Driscoll, that I'm saying you're involved in the worst game possible. Because you know what? You've given me a little something. You've made these Game Passes experiences without Matthew Stafford enjoyable. You made a lot of throws last week. Jeff Driscoll made more quality throws last week than 8, 10, 12 starters out there in the NFL. So credit to him and Darrell Bevell. And I think Jeff Driscoll's going to get a win as a starting quarterback this week. Why not?
He's due.
He can move, too.
Oh, yeah.
He made some plays with his feet.
Oh, he moves. The Bengals moved him to wide receiver at some point.
He might be the most
Scarborough?
He might be the most athletic quarterback other than Lamar Jackson.
Kyler Murray, calm down.
Hawk with Andrew Hawkins, who does the Game Day View show with me,
Kyler
said
Murray was
the
drafted top
Bengals
10 in
players.
baseball.
The Bengals players would just rave about Driscoll on the basketball court and just every
I can totally see that.
insane
Based on what we've
thing
seen.
that he was just the best athlete on the
So
team.
he's the new Josh McCown?
There you go.
The Redskins have the worst home field advantage in the NFL. Yes or no?
Yeah, because you can
Yes.
we have people telling us and tweeting at us saying that they're getting into the game for $30. This is in whatever, but the Redskins feel like an operation that almost needs to be taken over by the commissioner's office at this point. The same way, wasn't that a Milwaukee Brewers thing that happened way back when in baseball?
No, he was just the owner.
He was, yeah. Well, that was weird too.
They took over
you were finding out I know
Expos?
nothing about baseball, but
They've done it I think they've done it in all the major sports at one time or another.
it's a crisis bubbling up in so many different ways, on the field, off the field, in terms of a great fan base that's been left by the side of the road like a dead corpse. I mean, come on.
I would like to make an apology to the Lions and their fans. My theory that the Lions should be flexed out of Thanksgiving.
People do not like that.
It's unfair. Dave Feldman, big social shadowy league figure here, and fellow Peloton rider, he came after me really hard.
Was not happy with
He was not happy with me. And it was a similar, everyone that has been upset has the same thing. Don't take this from us. And then I thought to myself, the Lions, a sad franchise, my team, the Jets. What if the Jets got Thanksgiving? Would I want that taken away? No, I wouldn't. So I'm sorry. And listen, would it be better if the Cowboys and Patriots, for example, this week were playing on Thanksgiving, like a game of that caliber? Yeah, probably. But I understand tradition, so I'm sorry. That's it. There's no jokes. I didn't mean to
That was sort of
offend.
like a backhanded compliment.
Well, I think
a little bit of a joke.
Your strategy, though, or your initial comment, and I got off scot-free because I strongly backed you and didn't hear about it from anyone. But so I thank you for apologizing for both of us.
it.
But
I thought that was earnest and well done.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I know you mean it
Thanks.
too. I do. I know you mean it.
No, I'm happy that the fans of Detroit have that.
I know you mean it.
Back to this game for a second.
Sure.
I think Haskins has replaced Mason Rudolph as the hardest quarterback to watch.
He makes a couple plays, though, but yeah. At least.
I don't think he knows what he's doing back there. They need a developmental league for guys like him because he is not ready to play in the NFL.
This would be the week to get a win, though. Trey Flowers is hurt. He's been the only pass rush that they've had. He's played pretty well over the last month, and it looks like he's going to miss the game. They're missing another starter up front. And I don't know, this Lions defense. You got Darius Geis in there, your boy Adrian Peterson. I don't know if he's ever going to break that Walter Payton record. Now he's not getting snaps. Now he's hurt.
Edon.
You don't think they'll bring him back as a sometimes starter for next season too?
Well, he's not done for the season. He's just got to.
No, I mean,
I'm just saying another year.
They're benching him.
I think he entered the season 3 behind Peyton for the touchdown mark. It's not even first place, and I don't know if he's gotten a touchdown yet this season. Maybe one.
They might want to take that outside pitch out of the playbook. He's not making anybody miss laterally.
It's fair, dog. Lions released tackle Dan Skipper. I want you guys to know that. It just came across my wire.
Game changer.
All right, up next, Chris Wessling.
Oh, back to me. I'll take my boy Mason Rudolph.
Whoa!
It's funny. It's like, how many different ways can West take the Broncos and Mason Rudolph every single week?
Well, you guys are just going to leave him out there. I mean, what are the other options? Take Mitch Trubisky?
How about the West, the guy on the roof? He's still there. He needs that W to get off the roof in Cincinnati.
I'm not. See, I'm so not plugged into this story. Everyone keeps sending me this guy. It's a copycat. This happened in 1991 with Wildman Walker, who lived on a billboard for 61 days. Wildman Walker, a famous local entertainer. This guy, just some jamoke.
Wildman Walker.
It's happened a few times, stuff like this.
It was a trope in the 80s.
Late 80s, early 90s, attention grabber.
Wes, usually for a radio promotion. Yeah, Wes sent me a photo of Wildman Walker on the roof, and he actually had a mailbox on the roof, which I thought was a really nice touch with the Bengals logo.
It was a delightful touch, and you're right. That is commitment to the bit, and Wildman Walker was that kind of personality where he would.
So did he tape his show from the roof?
I believe he did.
Well, what's the point? Endless hits up to the billboard and the business, please.
They had built like a man cave up there for him. He was actually living on the billboard. It was amazing.
So, Wes, does he come off the roof, this guy? Whoever this Jamoke is, this Chooch, this guy that's just taken off the Wildman Walker's angle?
I don't think so because Ryan Finley's bad. Bengals quarterback. I mean, he's as bad as Mason Rudolph probably. All their throws are scripted, one-read, quick throws early in the game. Designed, this is what good coaches do. Get the ball out of the rookie quarterback's hands. And those plays don't go anywhere. He's off the mark on his checkdowns. Like it's a awful offense to watch. And I know Greg tweeted about this. Zach Taylor didn't really answer the question when they asked if he's playing his best quarterback. He's certainly not playing his best quarterback, not even by a long shot. So, I mean, I understand why they wanted to get a glimpse at him, but that's probably what late December is for.
What was his answer? Because I didn't.
They asked him, "Does Ryan Finley give the team the best chance of winning?" And his answer was, "We wouldn't play Ryan if we didn't feel like he gave us a chance to win," which is a clear non-answer.
It's not a bad answer.
It's not a bad answer, but it's. Of course he can't say that he gives them the best chance to win because his players would know he's lying. I mean, of course Andy Dalton's better. I was willing to be surprised by Finley, but then he threw, under 4 yards per attempt against the Raiders. So that, Andy Dalton could have probably won that game if he wanted to, really.
Absolutely.
I think he would have too. And I've killed Dalton, and it's sort of a be careful what you wish for because I've wanted to see someone else play quarterback. But I like quarterback switches when you go from type of quarterback A to something drastically different and try to liven up an offense that they brought in Zach Taylor. It couldn't be more of an opposite Sean McVay effect if you tried because nothing's changed. It's gotten worse. He seems relatively powerless to me. The team is so ultra lifeless and also looks no different than the same issues and the same cast of characters as last year. And I don't need Trent Green telling me 35 times during the game that Joe Mixon's family all bought tickets and how great it is and how they believe in the Bengals. It's like, give me a break. This team is going nowhere.
So annoyed at Trent Green all last Sunday for blowing sunshine.
Well, because they refuse to even criticize an operation that is staunchly saying we are not going to keep up with 31 other teams. We're going to do it our way, and it's going to be a problem if you're a fan of this.
Now, I don't think they're tanking. I don't think they're trying to lose. But as upset as everyone was in September about Miami, I think playing a quarterback that's worse, and maybe they do think that he could have had a future, and you want to evaluate him, and now's the time to find out, or else you get the number one pick. It's kind of like win-win if you're the Bengals,
or keep losing.
I think that's a little more egregious that you're playing a guy that you pretty much know is going to hurt your team's chances of winning.
If you're not tanking, and we haven't heard that connected to Cincinnati, certainly not even close to the level with Miami, then it was just a huge mistake to bench Dalton because you got.
Well, I think they are. I think
this head coach has to win a game. I mean, they've put themselves in position by putting this kid in a quarterback where they could potentially go 0-16, and that sticks with the organization forever. It's in play now.
Kat Terrell, who once covered the Bengals, suggested after I tweeted about it, and now she covers the Saints, does an awesome job on The Athletic, that it suggested to her, just from the outside, that he's the one not making he's not the one making the decisions.
Oh,
that's
I
the type
that.
of answer you make when you're not the one that making the decisions. And that made a lot of sense to me. And that goes back to why Chris Wesseling quit on the Bengals all those years ago and made that dossier.
I give Brian Flores a lot of credit for playing his best quarterback when the Redskins are not, the Bengals are not, the Steelers arguably are not.
I mean, yeah. we got to see a little more of Duck Hodges before
Sure,
we're gonna
but
go
definitely
crazy.
the Bengals and Redskins are not playing their best quarterbacks, and the Dolphins are.
I'm up, right?
Yeah.
How many games are
Prove
left?
us wrong, Mason
One.
Rudolph, by
You
the
got-
way.
you
That
got
was
one optioned in.
erase that stink fest that you made us watch last week, Mason Rudolph, please.
You got
All
the
right.
G-men.
The G-Men! 2-8 at the Bears. Ooh, this is a rough one. This one will not be getting a lot of love nationally, so I will try to do my best for our national podcast to give it the respect it deserves as a game that features professional football players giving it their all. Mitch Trubisky has a hip pointer, but apparently he will be playing this week.
Looks like it, yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. Now, is the toothpaste out of the old container, as they say, the tube, by taking him out of the game? Because he could have – I still think that something was still weird about all that, and they said, oh, he was injured. But the intimate sideline exchange between Nagy and Trubisky and the fact that, he could have played for 3 more minutes of game time and survived. So I think there was some Nagy –
Dr. Chow went in on that.
What did Chow say? I need to know
Basically
Chow
said
on
other
this.
quarterbacks with more egregious aches and pains played through them last
So,
week.
of
course,
I'd give that to Jameis
including
Winston.
Mitchell Trubisky. The injury occurred in the second quarter.
Right. So
But Nagy's explanation made sense. He pulled Trubisky once he saw the injury started to affect the quarterback's decision-making.
okay.
That made sense to me.
All right. Well, let's hope it's better because if this hip pointer comes back, I guess he'll be taken out of the game again with an injury. But I just wonder if this is just the beginning of the end. We'll remember the Sunday night game and as kind of, they are not going to get better with him. And this is just because that was kind of like a referendum game. I know the season had already kind of spun into a bad place already, but maybe they could have kind of gotten it back together in prime time, and they didn't even come close. So I think we're seeing the end of the Trubisky era, obviously. And then on the Giants side of it, there's been a lot of talk. We've had our disagreements with the injury stuff, Greg, about whether you should say a guy should, rest a little bit longer. I am all anti this, let's shut down Saquon Barkley for the rest of the year talk, because no one is saying that he's actually still injured.
I don't know where that came from, though. Who even said it?
That was just something that was being brought up a lot, I guess, by the media, and they were being asked
bubbled
about
up
it.
Monday.
And both the head coach, Pat Shurmur, and Saquon Barkley shot it down and said that we have no interest in shutting this thing down. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see how Barkley looks, because that has been one thing that's been missing from this season compared to last season, was how explosive and exciting on a week-by-week basis Saquon Barkley is. Maybe he gets back his mojo against the Bears defense that is good but not great.
Sterling Shepard is on track, at least, to return for this game. It's not official. He's gotten close before, and then there was a setback, so we'll see. That would help Daniel Jones a lot. I don't think it matters, like, picking this game whether Trubisky plays or not. It's like, there's not much of a difference. They're last in the league in explosive plays. They're not using Allen Robinson nearly to the full capability. Like, Blake Bortles did a better job hooking up Allen Robinson with big plays than the Bears are doing. With that said, the Bears could be the ultimate false hope team, because I still think they're the favorite in this game, and then they're on Thanksgiving Day against old Jeff Driscoll. Get ready for that at 9:30.
Young Jeff Driscoll.
And the Bears are capable of losing any game, but they're probably favorites right now to get to 6-6 and still be just hanging around before the schedule gets very hard and then the bottom falls out. So in a painful season for Bears fan, I feel like they might tease them a little more over the next couple weeks by beating a couple bad teams.
My boldest note was, this game makes me sad.
Yeah.
Because it does. Because
Sad.
it's and the Giants are the Giants, and we're probably looking at the final weeks of Pat Shurmur, and I always felt like he was brought in to carry forth the message of Eli and the ownership and do all that. And I also think that it's been a tough situation for him, and I hope that doesn't happen to him. Giants fans may disagree, but Matt Nagy, I mean, we are not too far removed from last season and Andy Reid prior to last season singing long songs about the creativity and what Matt Nagy brings to offense, no matter who the players are. And this has been one of the least interesting attacks in the league. And to look at the regression from last year to this, when you brought in Matt Nagy to light a spark under a Bears offense that fired the previous coach because the offense was so boring.
He was brought in to fix Mitch Trubisky.
Well, he won Coach of the Year doing it.
And
because of the defense.
Every single position.
He was one of the best coaches in the league.
Mitch Trubisky was not fixed though last season at all.
My point is Nagy did an amazing job creating open receivers
coaching around his limitations.
Yeah. Every single position on this offense is worse than it was last year.
Yeah.
It's one of the craziest.
I just think it's on Trubisky, though. Sometimes it's not on the coach. I want to see him get a chance with a different quarterback.
One of the craziest storylines of this week is when you saw it popped up. He was being asked, Nagy, are you going to give up play calling? This guy a year ago was he's part of that Sean McVay, the young coaches that are gifted with their offensive game planning. That just, to me, in a nutshell, is how awfully this season has gone.
Right. That's why I don't need 2 weeks from now. They're 6-6 and they're back in the shut it down. It's like this. I don't need the Bears. They need an offseason.
You gave them the fork.
They need an offseason as much as any team out there right now.
All right, time now for Road to Victory, presented by the United States Marine Corps. Love our Marines, our troops, both here and abroad. Okay, the Got
that right.
Packers, yes. Oh, man, the Green Bay Packers. They travel to the Big Bell Bottom to face the Niners, 8-2 against 9-1. What else needs to be said, Chris Wessling? This has potential to be one of the games of the year.
If the 49ers have some semblance of health, sure, but I don't think they're the same team they were 3 or 4 weeks ago. When George Kittle's not playing, Matt Breida's not playing, Emmanuel Sanders is banged up, Deebo Samuel is banged up, and Deebo Samuel, I think he had 8 for 100 in back-to-back games, first time in franchise history. That guy was playing well. He's like a running back with the ball in his hands. I just, who are the 49ers if all these guys are out? Their defense has not been dominant for 3 straight weeks.
I think the defense has been great. Really?
They're giving up 25 points a week now?
Well, against Seattle, they basically didn't give up an offensive touchdown until late in the fourth quarter. The Seahawks had 12, 13 drives. They couldn't move the ball at all. The turnovers are putting them in a bad spot. They're not.
Compare that to when they were giving up 3, 7, and 0
right.
every week.
They've stepped up in class in terms of opponent, and the Cardinals, for whatever reason, have played them well. But even the Cardinals have punted the ball a ton, and to me, it's been more on their offense. But I've got some news for you, Wes. George Kittle and Deebo Samuel returned to practice Thursday wearing non-contact jerseys. So it sounds like it's a baby step, and neither one of them is guaranteed to play. Emmanuel Sanders did play through that injury, not 100% last week.
He was in and out of the
He didn't finish the game, but if you have those 3 guys on the field, and Kittle's the key one. Kittle, to me, is Gronk, because it not only kills their passing game, it kills their running game.
Yep.
Some people were pointing out just how the tight ends that replace Kittle doing well, catching some passes, but have been blown up in their running game, and they have not run the ball very well.
We haven't seen Green Bay in a while because of that. There was that snow game before their bye week, and 2 things. I thought their pass rush came back to life in that attack a little bit against Carolina, and they ran the ball well. They slashed Carolina's defense, and they're not the first or last team to do that, but that's a good formula for taking care of business against San Francisco. Will not be as easy to do that against the front of the Niners defense.
I know Jimmy Garoppolo had a couple turnovers, including the second pick, which was credit to the Niners defense for getting that 3 and out, because if they don't get a 3 and out,
game over.
The game is over, and the Cardinals have a huge win, and everyone's looking at both teams a lot differently. But credit to that stop, and then Garoppolo making the big drive and beating the 0 blitz at the end for the touchdown to Wilson. So he's just been a lot more fun to watch for me the last few weeks, and he's becoming a storyline to me, like not Kirk Cousins-esque, Wes, but kind of like, all right, let's figure out who Garoppolo is. Is he a kind of premier field general type guy? Is he below a Kirk Cousins type guy? Like, where does he fit in? And we're starting to get, for the first time ever, an actual sample size of this guy, because he's either been a backup to Tom Brady or an injured quarterback. We're finally getting a collection of games that is lasting months upon months, and he's just kind of a fun guy to see develop.
Well, he's now started more games this year, or equal, than he did the entire rest of his career. He's started the same amount of games as Darnold, that's just where he is. And I think you're right that he's getting better each week. And I give the 49ers a ton of credit. If you think about what they've lost throughout the year, it's not just this week. I mean, they played without their tackles for a while. Remember Jerick McKinnon? I mean, he was supposed to be part. Remember Jason Verrett? He was supposed to be part of it. Quan Alexander's long gone. Akella Witherspoon, their starting cornerback's been in and out. Ronald Blair's on injured reserve. It's like
D Ford's hurt right now.
D Ford's barely played, and this team has battled through it to get to 9-1. That's why I've been leaning Packers all week, and now this news that Kittle and Samuel are back at practice. I think they've been the better team for the most part this year because of all they've withstood. The Packers are the exact opposite, maybe the healthiest team in the NFL, have had virtually no significant injuries in the entire season, which is almost impossible. At least right now, all the guys on their team are healthy, and they haven't lost anyone of real value for the whole season.
I want to see how their defense plays in this game. We were down on their defense before the bye, before that Panthers game, and they were all right against the Panthers, but I want to see in this game this defense play like they did in September and not in October and early November.
I don't know if we're getting that defense again. We'll see.
I got some news for you guys. If the Packers do win this week and move to 9-2, I think they're the first seed in the NFC. After this game, at Giants, home Redskins, home Bears.
As opposed to the 49ers, who play 3 straight teams that currently have an 8-2 record.
Wow.
The Ravens and the Saints are after them, and there's a lot of these matchups. We also
And who's after that? Say it. You could say it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Falcons, the toughest game on the schedule yet. I didn't even know that.
Greg's face lit up when he said that.
And we also have Seahawks 49ers. It's great that all these bye teams are all playing each other down the stretch. Tasty Sunday night game.
Have you noticed that bye teams have not been playing well coming out of the bye?
Especially the London ones. I think no one won coming out of their bye after London.
But if you look, a lot of people were tweeting. If you look at who some of those teams played,
the Atlanta Falcons.
It wasn't like there weren't crazy results where like suddenly an AFC title type team doesn't show up.
The bye in general is overrated as like a positive factor. I mean, of course it gets you healthier, but there's no like stats over the years that say it makes you better.
I mean, if anything,
it's just you're just the same team when you come back.
If you get to take a week vacation and everyone's like, "Oh, are you refreshed now?" It's like, "No, now I just know that I want more vacation." You don't come back doing your job better.
Well said.
You know who should have gotten a bye coming out of London? You're on the NFL podcast.
Didn't happen.
Not going to happen.
Did not happen at all.
Erica,
do
we have a bye coming up? We have a bye week on the schedule?
Yeah, a couple.
That's what they want to hear from us next year.
Who is
not only
they?
It's like not only send us. We're gonna take that next week off. Please. Sorry.
Stay in London for another week.
And that was the Road to Victory, presented by the United States Marine Corps. Support your troops. Finally, Monday Night Football. The Baltimore Ravens, 8-2, travel to the Coliseum to face the Rams. So the Rams get back-to-back primetime games here. Sunday night last week, got the win against the downtrodden, not quite moribund, but downtrodden Chicago Bears. And now they get the Ravens. Another game I thought very hard, Mark, about locking up because, God, I mean.
For who?
What do you mean? The team that wins every week and has the best quarterback in the league this season.
I don't think you could look yourself in the mirror locking up the Ravens against the Rams.
I agree with Mark on that.
I go by the Vegas test. And
well, that's fine. I'd give you a hard time about that.
By the mirror test, Dan?
No, I always go by the field goal to look in the mirror.
Well, that would be controversial, but more power.
I've always done it that way.
I disagree, just because of that. Like, we think it's so predictable, but there's a reason that.
Well, you're like halfway on the Rams' payroll, so
no. There's a reason though. There's a reason why. Let's say, for instance, the Ravens are not that heavily favored in this game because the Rams are at home. And they're a 6-4 team that has something going on to them. And it really wouldn't be that crazy to me to see the Rams and the Ravens in the fourth quarter of this game. I know
you can take every game apart like this and say the other team has a chance.
Right, because it's almost always true.
Right, so like we should just be able to lock every team.
Well, no, I'd say if it's more than a touchdown.
I would say this: the Ravens are the Ravens at this point. 30, 37, 49, 41 points in a row. They had some issues at times. They are playing at the height of their powers right now, issuing death blows to teams midway through the second quarter. And if you tell me, you look at Jared Goff at this point in the season and what happened against Chicago last week, and you give me Lamar Jackson, and which one of these two is changing the lives of every single person inside the organization and about to have 200 people fitted for Super Bowl rings, that's much closer to Lamar Jackson than Jared Goff right now. And I hear you, Greg. It's in L.A., but that doesn't feel like a huge
and it's in November, I think, is the bigger thing. Not that the Ravens need to be worried about, it's not like they need to play worse, but they're peaking right now. And 2 months from now, will they still be peaking? Teams change, and I think the Rams especially tried to change last week. It was against the Bears. You're not going to go crazy. But I think they max protected. They changed the way they did some of their running game. The offensive line played well. They had a good game, and they opened up some holes. And so if you're the Rams, they're now kind of – it's funny, they were the it team a year ago at this point when they were on Monday Night Football. Now the Ravens are the it team, and the Rams, to me, are kind of just trying to, play to their defense and run the ball and not turn the ball over, and that's probably their best route of winning this game.
Robert Woods not in the building right now.
What is going on with that?
He practiced he returned Thursday.
He did. Okay.
So he's in the building.
He returned Thursday. Brandon Cooks is going to play. Todd Gurley
Good
said,
luck to him.
I guess I felt like the old Todd after the game, and I thought the first half was his best half of football all year. And then I went and watched Christian McCaffrey right after Todd Gurley and said, that's not the old Todd. Like, that's not the old Todd, because Christian McCaffrey looked like a totally different player than 2019 Todd Gurley.
So that guy's gone. Can the guy that's in his place be productive? He was last week. I think he had like 125 total yards.
Like Greg said, they changed some things up. They went with Johnny Munt, their third-string tight end, as kind of a lead blocker on a lot of plays, which they never did in the past. So they were trying some new things, and Gurley did look good.
And they protected Goff well for maybe the first time all year. And I don't know if that was what that said.
Well, they barely passed for most of the
That's maybe not the worst idea ever if you're ahead in the game or competitive.
How about a legit revenge game? Marcus Peters' revenge game.
I think this is closer than some of the ones that have been tossed around as revenge. Anyone playing former employee, please.
I blew it because my favorite revenge game of the year was the one before. I'm still going to talk about it. Matt LaFleur tried to hire Mike LaFleur, his brother, over the.
Are we
in
back
the
in the road to victory?
We're back in the road. Let's get on the road.
Never
to
give up
victory.
on the Marines.
He tried to hire his brother. What a great story. Mike LaFleur. We're going to be the LaFleur brothers and take over the
Flying
world.
LaFleurs.
You know what Kyle Shanahan said? Nope, I've got the best LaFleur. I know Mike is better than Matt. He's the LaFleur I want. I'm keeping him in San Francisco. Maybe even against his wishes. He's going to be my coordinator. And now Matt LaFleur gets to commit fratricide against his brother.
Okay.
He's going to kill him.
Sure wish you said that 5 minutes ago.
I don't care.
Hey,
I got bits.
Can we close out this Rams-Ravens thing with a what's more likely?
Before we do that, can we just give Marcus Peters a little bit of love for how incredible he's been on this defense? Because that was another trade that didn't get that much pub when it happened. It was like, oh, Marcus Peters, the Rams aren't going to sign him anyway. The Ravens go get him. And he's not been Minkah Fitzpatrick great in the secondary, but he's been an impact player.
Been close.
Good teams stay good. Bad teams stay bad. Wes.
Wow.
This one is kind of geared toward Mark Sessler. What's more likely? Wink Martindale wins Assistant Coach of the Year.
Ooh.
Greg Roman wins Assistant Coach of the Year.
Ooh, another buddy.
Or John Harbaugh wins NFL Head Coach of the Year.
That's a fun one.
Well, I think 2 out of 3 is very possible.
Who votes on Assistant Coach of the Year?
Mark Sessler.
All the AP voters.
It's
Same
my
as
vote,
MVP.
basically. I don't know how, if they ever went Wink Martindale and not Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson keeps this up, there would be a revolt. This is someone, I think Greg Roman has not had to reinvent himself, just that he was a hot commodity, kind of vanished into the mist, and now is back with Lamar, a super-powered version of anything Colin Kaepernick would have ever given you, times 10 in Lamar Jackson. And Greg Roman...
Times 10, let's calm down. Colin Kaepernick took the league by storm for 6 games.
Well,
in 2012.
It's not,
I'm just saying.
It's not a
Let's
Colin
go.
Kaepernick thing, but I would say the reason that John Harbaugh deserves it is because John Harbaugh, unlike a lot of coaches, was able to look in the mirror and say, let's change everything, and have the boldness to do it. And the whole staff, at least, looked at Lamar Jackson and said, he's a quarterback. I know there was the press release that Greg enjoyed very much this week about their former offensive aide, but Lamar Jackson is a quarterback, and we're going to roll with it when a bunch of other teams didn't. And also, by the way, Joe Flacco, who we are all married to and the owner loves, is broken down at this point. He's gone.
The owner loved Lamar Jackson.
Well, but they always were backing Flacco, and it took some guts that some head coaches don't have to make the changes they did last year and become electrifying, and then a full offseason of saying this will never carry over, Lamar Jackson doesn't do enough well, everyone's going to figure it out, and bang, they're twice as powerful. So give everyone Coach of the Year.
Could be a Roman Harbaugh sweep.
I agree with that.
Martindale's defense is number 1 in efficiency, according to Football Outsiders, since Week 7. So since Week 7, they have the number 1 defense in the NFL and the number 1 offense.
I have no idea how long assistant coach has been around that award, but no team's ever swept this, right? That's impossible.
Not yet.
I think it's only been around for a few years.
About 2014
about 4
or so.
years.
Yeah.
Very
important award.
This
Dan.
is very I want to say
very
that
important award.
The Ravens are playing incredibly right now, and perhaps we're getting caught up in the excitement of that they're so unstoppable and perfect right now. I would worry that they're peaking. Well, maybe they keep winning.
That's fine. Like, I totally hear what Greg and you were saying, that it's not going to go week after week after week here, but why are we starting to diminish them?
I would never do that. I would never do that. I think it's more a comment on how awesome they are right now. That you could have this conversation, and you could say, I pick all 3 of them, and Wes would agree, and that the Ravens are the talk of the league right now.
Well, how awesome are they? They beat Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, and Deshaun Watson by double digits.
Pretty damn
awesome. Dang. To answer your question, Dan, the assistant coach of the year has been around for 5 years, and the Bears swept it last year.
Last year?
Nagy and Fangio.
Well, there you go right there.
That's not special.
And the first time it ever was an award was also a sweep back in 2014. Bruce Arians and your boy, Todd Bowles.
Wow.
For the 2014
So I
Cardinals.
would call it especially narrative-driven.
Well, it makes sense. The teams that have a great coaching staff, they get awards. Or they have a great year.
I mean,
you win assistant, you go on to become head coach typically, too.
Yeah. I would.
Pat Shermer.
Can Skarnecki get it?
I think almost.
Except for Wade Phillips.
Yeah, Wade Phillips was the only one who did not.
3 times. Yeah.
You have to be a coordinator?
No, because Skarnecki there was like a year of some dark horse, Skarnecki buzz, but I don't think he beat
Todd
out
Bowles
Nick
winning
Fangio.
it got him to your New York Jets.
He did, and that didn't work out so well.
Greg Roman's the prohibitive favorite right now. Whereas I think for the coach of the year, Sean Payton would be right up there for me with John Harbaugh.
All right, we will be back tonight. As I said, Colts, Texans, and then Cynthia Freeland. That's fun. And then on Sunday, we will recap every game we just previewed here. The wheel goes round and round. Stan Hansa signing off for Quiet Storm, the mailman, the old boss, Ricky Hollywood.